What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the reveal of the number 21 team in my 2021 NFL Power Rankings with a deep dive into the Bears. Before we get started, please do hit that like button down below. It really does help me out and supports the channel. Also, if you enjoy the deep dive, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss an upload as we count down to the number one team in my Power Rankings. And doesn't it feel like the more things change, the more things stay the same with the Bears? As with a pretty solid roster, a familiar word, hope, has reemerged with the quarterback situation as they draft Justin Fields with their first round pick, trading up to get the young prodigy out of Ohio State. So we're going to be talking a lot about Justin Fields as well as this talented roster. It's going to be a very fun deep dive for one of the more polarizing teams heading into the 21 season. I want to recap their offseason first. It was definitely a busy spring for the Bears. Chuck Pagano is going to retire here, the defensive coordinator, an illustrious career around the league, but ready to hand the keys over to Sean Diassi. A lot of optimism there. Going to most likely implement the same system. But it is notable. Mitch Trubisky, is he actually a departure? That's up for debate, but he is gone, to the chagrin of many Bears fans. Cordarrelle Patterson is gone, the kick returner / running back. An interesting release at left tackle of Charles Leno. Bobby Massey also gone at right tackle, so both of the tackles that have been a bit of a stable there, they're going to have to replace. And then in the defense, Kyle Fuller, another kind of surprising release between him and Charles Leno, putting a lot of pressure on some other guys to step up for two of their better players there. And then Roy Robinson Harris, a really nice role player at defensive end, got a nice contract in Jacksonville. They will look to replace that void, and as well Brent Urban, who played a really good run defense role last year. So definitely not without some losses here, but they did some really nice things to supplement those. So we mentioned Sean Diassi stepping in internally as the defensive coordinator, and then Andy Dalton comes in at quarterback along with Justin Fields. We'll get into the quarterback breakdown here shortly. They did draft Tevin Jenkins in the second round. One of the steals of the draft, in my opinion, a true first-round talent there. So you're at least replacing one of those tackles there. And then they actually get Eddie Goldman, stud nose tackle back, who had opted out last year. That is considered an addition. And then Desmond Trufant trying to basically replace Kyle Fuller there as that veteran corner role. So the roster as a whole, probably a net negative, but if the quarterback room is upgraded, it's going to be a net positive on how good this team can be. So let's go ahead and talk about that quarterback room. So it's going to be Andy Dalton and Justin Fields here, and Nick Foles, but let's not talk about Nick Foles. And those that followed my draft analysis, I love the Justin Fields pick. I thought it was one of the best picks of the draft. I gave it an A+, and I've even been critical of teams like Atlanta and Denver for passing on Justin Fields. It just might be the best quarterback draft pick in a 100-year history of the Chicago Bears. But that said, a great pick in the draft does not mean that the job is done, and it's as simple as just plug him in day one and you're good to go. And there's two big reasons here that I think it's far from a given that Justin Fields starts day one here or even at all in 2021. And the number one reason for that is I think Dalton gets a bad rap here. The last 2 years have been really tough for Andy Dalton. You go back to 2019 with a starry-eyed Zach Taylor and a terrible roster, the worst team in the NFL. They end up benching Dalton just to see what they have in the younger players. He had no chance there. But the reality is you go back to 2016, 2017, Andy Dalton was a good NFL starting quarterback, and it's not like the physical traits have dropped off. Now, the talent in the NFL is much deeper. If he goes back to what he was in his prime, which at the time was maybe the 15th best quarterback in the NFL, there was an ever-growing trend of people calling your starting quarterback the Andy Dalton line, where if you're better than Andy Dalton, you're great. If you're worse than Andy Dalton, you need to move on. If you have Andy Dalton, you're like, what do we truly do here? You're neither happy or sad. So if you get back to that version of Andy Dalton in today's NFL, that's, a starting caliber top 32 quarterback, probably around the 24 to 25 range. And the reason I think that you could get that guy back is we mentioned the year in Cincinnati, and then you look at Dallas last year. Yeah, Dallas on paper looks like a great situation, but if you just break down Andy Dalton's story from free agency last year until now, he goes to Dallas as a backup because for some reason the New Englands and Denvers and Washingtons and all these other teams that needed quarterbacks didn't want to take a shot on Andy Dalton. He ends up as a backup in Dallas, a COVID offseason where there's no practice. So he shows up basically week 1 as the backup. He's never thrown to these receivers. He probably hadn't even shaken Mike McCarthy's hand yet. He shows up as the backup. Week 3 or week 4, whatever which one it was, Dak Prescott goes down, and they lean on Andy Dalton, who hadn't gotten any reps with the first team because practice was extremely limited. All he had really done at that point was read the playbook, and then he actually got the virus. It knocks him on his ass for a week, 2 weeks. He comes back, and the story is he got it really bad, and that can make things really difficult to learn an offense and become a starting NFL quarterback when you basically have the flu on steroids, if you will. So he comes back, and then by the time he comes back from COVID, the offensive line was in shambles. You can make a case that Dallas had the worst offensive line last year. Yes, on paper it looks great, but none of those guys were healthy. Literally all of their starters were out other than Connor Williams at left guard. Zach Martin was in there for a little while, and then he got out. So, and then you have Mike McCarthy as the offensive coordinator, so to speak. That's not ideal. So a lot of things stacked against Andy Dalton last year. I'm not here to make all of the excuses in the world. He was far from perfect, but I do think Andy Dalton gets a bad beat. I think you can get something close to what he once was, which is like the 25th best quarterback in the NFL, which, embarrassingly enough for the Bears, that's the best quarterback they've had since Jay Cutler. So I like the signing of Andy Dalton, but it's not just that. Reason number 2 here for why I think Fields is not the day one starter and maybe doesn't even start at all this year is, while despite probably being the best quarterback draft pick in the history of the Bears, Fields is also, in my opinion, a player with a lot of flaws as a passer that need to either disappear or be weeded out at the next level. My number one criticism of Fields as a prospect is that there are legit moments on his tape at Ohio State where he gets caught gluing in on first reads, being late to his progressions, and simply making some questionable decisions out of structure. And this was debated ad nauseum in the NFL world coming into the draft. And there was a lot of conversation around this, actually it was the offensive play design at Ohio State that led to him staring down receivers. Well, look at Justin Herbert last year. He had the same problems as Fields, so Fields will be just fine. And all of these points are reasonable and are certainly part of the equation here. And there's totally a chance that Fields just hits the ground running and he's just like Herbert last year and he kicks ass and takes names. There's no lack of traits to say that couldn't happen. Hell, I had a higher grade on Fields coming out than I did on Herbert, but in my opinion, these arguments don't make those weaknesses in his game just automatically disappear. Scouts have been analyzing the processing and decision-making of NFL quarterbacks for as long as football has existed, and forgive me for not just dismissing these things that were on his tape at Ohio State just because Justin Herbert proved myself and many others wrong over the same criticism last year. I mean, shit, you know who also had the same criticisms coming out of college? Mitch Trubisky, who this very staff couldn't overcome. So, again, it's not that Justin Fields can't read a defense or is going to throw all these bad picks in the NFL necessarily, but I did consider him a quarterback coming out, like Mahomes, like I felt about Jordan Love last year, as a player who would benefit from redshirting a year and really get that time to get to know the offense and learn. Because I think while a Justin Herbert exists, there's even more examples of similar prospects like Trubisky and Bortles who have bad tendencies in their game, then get rushed into action, and by nature they lean on those bad tendencies to the point where they actually become an exaggerated part of their game. And that's when that bust word comes out. We also have evidence of guys like Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers getting that time to develop, and then they see the field and just take off. So that's a long breakdown there, but getting Justin Fields to reach his unbelievably high upside is the most important variable in Chicago football. And ultimately, I think they have a great plan in pace, pun intended. And I also respect the hell out of Matt Nagy being open about this, about how he's going to do what's best for the future of the Bears and for Justin Fields. And at least as we sit here today, he says that he's not going to make any selfish, rash decisions about the quarterback room because his own job is on the line. And I truly believe that if we're playing the odds here, which is what every NFL team does, the best plan here is to go with Dalton in 2021, as long as he can play well and keep this team afloat and in the playoff race. You allow this team to develop the right culture and tendencies as a team, and then you hand the keys over to Fields in 2022. Is that ultimately what happens here? Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that because there's just too many variables. Is Dalton going to play well enough to allow for that? Will ownership interfere? Will Nagy give in to the justified impatience of the Bears fans? Or hell, is Justin Fields just going to come out and look so good that the Bears have no choice to just let him loose on the league? Honestly, all of these outcomes are possible, and it's what makes the Bears one of the most polarizing teams in the entire league heading into 2021. So they're going to rank 25th at quarterback. That's with, Dalton, I think, can be a quality starter, or at least just a starting caliber quarterback, one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the league, if you will. And then there's the Justin Fields factor, which, he could come in and be near that top 10 range, be something like Herbert last year, or honestly, he could just not play if Andy Dalton's good enough and the rest of this team falls in place. And I think that's maybe what's best for the future of the Bears, is just to have patience with this thing and let Fields develop. Now, best case scenario is those weaknesses in his college game just don't show up and he's ready to go and he starts and he's amazing and the Bears are a Super Bowl contender, which is in the realm of possibilities. But do I think that's what happens in 2021? I wouldn't bet on it, no. You got Nick Foles there, like I said. If they get to Nick Foles, something went seriously wrong here. We'll see if Foles even makes the team here. They're paying him a bunch of money. They might just cut him. So 25th at quarterback, and now we're going to get into the rest of this roster that's really good and ready to go. So you've got the running back room that's going to rank 19th in the league. Really nice balance of skill sets. You've got David Montgomery, who's just a true kind of three-down, contact balance, power back. No true criticisms of David Montgomery. He's not a burner. I don't think he has the highest upside of any running back in the league, but he's super tough, excellent vision, really good at making that first guy either miss or breaking that tackle. I just like watching David Montgomery. It's an aesthetically pleasing play style for a running back, so I'm a fan of Montgomery. I think he has a really nice season. There's a lot of good running back rooms in the league, so Bears fans might be mad about 19th. It is what it is. You got Tariq Cohen, excellent receiving back. Wasn't much of a factor last year, missed a lot of time, so you get him back, which will be nice. Really excellent compliment to David Montgomery, and that's really all you need. Two cheap, explosive, complementary backs. That's the NFL in 2021. But behind him, you got some depth as well. So Damian Williams can be something like a David Montgomery, actually gives you a little bit more big play explosiveness, a little more speed. Had a nice year in Kansas City in 2019, opted out last year. So that's nice as a third running back for sure. And then Khalil Herbert, a very nice contact balance, late round pick. A lot of comparisons to Aaron Jones coming out of college, and I think those are fair. He's got some speed, some vision, the contact balance, the receiving ability. He's a very nice fourth running back to have. And then anyone else after that is honestly not even worth talking about. It's a good, deep running back room. No elite talent, no top 10 talent, but definitely going to get the job done there, ranking 19th in the league. And then the receiving room, they rank 24th for receiving talent. Allen Robinson really headlining this group. I'm a huge Allen Robinson truther. I mean, the guy has been dealt the worst quarterbacks in the league. Now, part of that is his own choice. He did choose Mitch Trubisky over Aaron Rodgers, so you get what you wish for there. But he is a top 10 receiver quite easily, and that's saying a lot considering like the quarterback play he's had. The dude, there's no criticisms of his game. He's got amazing hands. He runs routes. He's got the size, his release, run blocking, leadership. Like, there is not a single flaw in Allen Robinson's game. He's a phenomenal alpha number one receiver that if Justin Fields clicks here, we might finally get to see Allen Robinson have that, best receiver in the NFL season, similar to like a Michael Thomas had, a Devontae Adams had last year. There's no reason Allen Robinson couldn't be that guy with a Drew Brees or Aaron Rodgers level quarterback. Then your number 2 wide receiver, Darnell Mooney, breakout rookie late in last season. I love this dude in the draft, was super high in this pick. I mean, he was just too good to pass up for them, even though they had some names ahead of him. And you saw the separation ability, a tough dude. He is an awesome compliment because he is a guy that can take the top off the defense, but he's not just a true deep threat. He's got the shiftiness. Just excited to see Darnell Mooney's future. Again, hopefully getting better quarterback play. It's a nice 1-2 punch. After that, you're really surrounded by a bunch of question marks. Anthony Miller, I loved coming out, and for my own sake, I really hope he breaks out here in year 4 with better quarterback play. But maybe he is what he is. Maybe he was a little overdrafted coming out of a small school, not an elite athlete, not the best hands in the world, can make some great catches, but just inconsistent. Maybe he is just a middling slot guy that was a little overdrafted. It might be time to maybe admit that, but I still, I thought there was a chance he could have like that Antonio Brown career trajectory coming out of college. It just hasn't been there. So maybe just isn't the dude. A big year for Anthony Miller, contract season. And then you have Damiere Byrd, who actually was, played valiantly for the Patriots last year as a deep threat surrounded by Cam Newton's arm strength. So, he got open. If Justin Fields is a good quarterback, he's going to be an impact and someone that you have to account for. So you also have Marquise Goodwin. Between those two guys, you hope they stay healthy. You hope you get that kind of decoy, deep threat that you throw the ball to 15 times a year and keep defenses honest. So I don't know if they both make the team, but that's what they're looking for there. You can pretty obviously say that. And then you have Riley Ridley, another one of my dudes. Like, I'm not ready. I'll admit, I had a late first, early second round grade on Riley Ridley. I thought he was a poor man's Devontae Adams, which is a very good wide receiver. I love his route running, his release, his ball skills. He hasn't done that in the NFL. He has not played up to my own draft grade. He fell into the 5th round, and he doesn't have top speed, so it's going to be tough. But I'm also not ready to admit I was wrong on Riley Ridley. You guys know I will admit when I'm wrong about a prospect. We just haven't gotten to see Riley Ridley either play on the field or get good quarterback play. But when he gets out there, he produces. So I'm just saying, I still believe in Riley Ridley. Probably not first, second round grade believe in him, but I think he can become a quality starter as like a third guy. You got Javon Wims, very like streaky, flashy player, can make some big plays, but also drop issues, boneheaded penalties. Like, I don't know, Bears fans are probably ready to let go of Javon Wims after what we saw from him last year. And then Daz Newsome, really nice mid-round pick. I mean, they've had success with some of these guys. Darnell Mooney, for example. I think Ridley can play if they ever needed him. And Newsome, again, can be a slot guy. I think if they let Anthony Miller go, or maybe they even trade away Anthony Miller, you can plug in Daz Newsome as your slot, and he can play. So that was a nice pick. And then you're pretty deep there. That's 8 deep. You got big-bodied receiver in Jester Way, Chris Lacey, kind of whatever after that. But it's a solid group of receivers, kind of good, not great. And then the tight end group, below average. Jimmy Graham actually played well down the stretch last year, but the last 3 years have been really ugly for Jimmy Graham. The hands stabilized last year, but still not a blocker. He's slowing down. He doesn't separate much. Just kind of a big-bodied red zone threat. You got Cole Kmet. These guys basically split. Kmet, a better blocker. Really nasty, like tenacious run after catch guy. It felt like every time Kmet touched the ball, he was fighting for yards or trucking or stiff-arming someone. So you like that physical aspect, being brought to the table here with Cole Kmet. You could do worse than those two tight ends. There's definitely worse tight end groups in the NFL, but just not a ton of explosiveness and mismatch problems there between those two. you got some veterans in Holtz and Horsted, kind of whatever. Jake Butt, if he could stay healthy, can he finally develop and become a quality starter? Someone that was very Greg Olsen-esque coming out of Michigan that just hasn't been able to stay healthy. So the tight end group is fine. And then you're definitely getting some contribution from these running backs as well. Tariq Cohen, a legit like route runner type, just flies out of the backfield. If you're, having him go to the flats or screens, he's outstanding. You can line him up as a slot receiver, just a true versatile receiving back. And then David Montgomery, just again, really good at making that first guy miss. Not as much of a speedy mismatch type, but definitely someone that is effective in the receiving game, check downs, screens, that kind of stuff. And then Damian Williams, same thing, like very effective in space. Khalil Herbert, running 4 deep like that, like they're always going to have a good receiving back on the field. I feel pretty good about that. So 24th in the league, definitely potential to exceed that. I think Darnell Mooney has legit, like maybe Robbie Anderson upside is like a real number 2. The slot could potentially be better with Miller and Newsome. It could go up to be more of a top 20 group. Probably not like top 10 upside, but it's a nice receiving group. Certainly not enough to prohibit Andy Dalton from playing well, and not enough to limit Justin Fields' game either. They've got more than enough there. But it is the offensive line I'm a little bit worried about. Not a little bit worried. I'm big worried about this offensive line. So like we said, they let their 2 starting tackles go in Massey and Leno. And neither of them are superstars, but they have been a very stable force for them. Now, Massey missed a lot of time last year and the year before that, so they were probably like, all right, let's go with something else there. Leno, releasing him was strange to me. This team released him and Fuller, had to just be to clear up some cap room. This team does have a lot of expensive veterans on the team, so an unfortunate cap casualty there, but it's a big loss for this team because your 2 tackles now are Tevin Jenkins and veteran swingman Elijah Wilkinson. Maybe Jermaine Ifedi plays right tackle, but Tevin Jenkins, like I said, steal of a second-round pick, a true first-round talent. I'm not going to criticize Tevin Jenkins, but he is a rookie that is now going to be switching to the left side of the line. I think he'll be good. Is he going to be a dominant left tackle? I don't think so. Is he even going to be as good as Charles Leno was in year 1? That's definitely a wait-and-see moment there. I think he can have a better career than Leno, absolutely. But I'm especially worried about that right tackle spot. It's either going to be Wilkinson or Ifedi. They're probably going to be sorting through what their best offensive line is throughout the summer. They certainly will be. Right now, Elijah Wilkinson set to start at right tackle. Very, very low end, not even a low-end starter. He is a backup type. He is a career swingman 6th tackle, the guy that you want as your backup. So if you get an injury, you can plug him in and he can get in a defender's way. But on a snap-to-snap basis, he's just not a high-end starter. So you don't feel very good about that at all. And then on the interior, Cody Whitehair at center, he's actually been kind of rough at center, but he's a super good guard. It's strange. I don't know if he struggles with the snap and then getting set and landing his hands or what. I'd have to dive deeper into the technical reason for why he grades out so much worse at center than he does at guard. But they seem set on him at center, which means James Daniels at guard and Jermaine Ifedi probably next to him. Now, this does get a little messy because Jermaine Ifedi plays both guard and tackle. He's actually been okay at tackle, so I might even prefer a lineup where you have Ifedi at right tackle and then you play Bars or even Wilkinson at right guard. I think that could be what they go with, so we'll see how that all plays out. And I think that would be better, but not going to change their offensive line ranking because let's be honest, Seahawks fans will tell you Jermaine Ifedi at right tackle. Ifedi's developed since the days in Seattle, but it's still Jermaine Ifedi that we're talking about. But yeah, the interior group there, it's not bad. I think Daniels and Whitehair especially is a good duo. Alex Bars stepped in really nice as a Notre Dame offensive lineman that's been developing here. So I think Bars could take that right guard job, and then it upgrades at right tackle, and things are a little bit better here. But ultimately it does not look pretty. You have a couple other depth pieces I'm interested in. Sam Mustipher stepped in and looked like a really nice athletic run blocker in the last kind of quarter of the season last year at center. He could get in the mix if he really stuns here. Again, you could be looking at a situation where Mustipher starts at center, Whitehair gets to play guard where he seems more natural, and then Ifedi slides out to tackle. Also, Larry Borum was kind of one of my late round my guys. He has really smooth athletic skills and the size to play either tackle or guard. I thought he was really nice value as a 5th round pick. I had him as a late 3rd, early 4th round guy just because the traits he has are difficult to find. So if the offensive line coach can do a good job of developing here, Borum could potentially be the long-term right tackle, but in a rookie season, no. Not a guy you want to see on the field right now. Just way too much work to do with his technique. But you hope you've got a guy that will develop there. And then behind that, some late round guys they've drafted like Simmons. It's really not much after those 8, which is fine. 8's about the standard for how deep you want to run at O-line. So, yeah, they ranked 27th. I think this is a group that could be a concern. We've seen Andy Dalton play with some really bad offensive lines, and that be a problem for him. So, if you're really struggling at right tackle and Whitehair continues to struggle at center, kind of like he has, and Tevin Jenkins maybe doesn't hit the ground running as a tackle in year 1, moving over to the left side, that's when you get into worst-case scenario, where you're losing games, Andy Dalton's not playing well, and then you have to rush Justin Fields in because you're under pressure, and you rush him into the table too soon. That's where this could go wrong. I'm not saying that is what's going to happen, but I think that's part of the polarizing range of outcomes here for the Bears, and the offensive line's a big part of that. So the offense as a whole ranks 27th right now. There's a lot of legitimate question marks. You have the coaching alone is fine. Matt Nagy has had some good moments. I think he even gets a little bit too much crap. Mitch Trubisky has been just a wart over the play calling. He's forced Matt Nagy to basically dumb down what he wants to do. That's never ideal. So I think a little more comfortable now with 2 much better quarterbacks than Trubisky. I think we see a better version of Matt Nagy, but he's still rather unproven as a stud play caller. You have a quarterback situation that's up in the air. You have a receiving room that I don't want to say it's Allen Robinson and nobody else because there's other pieces I like, but you don't have a go-to number 2 option, assuming, you hope Mooney can get there, but he's not there yet as a reliable number 2. And then the offensive line. So there's some real questions about this offense. Now, they have top 15 upside here. I think the offensive line is what keeps them out of top 10 upside. But, I think there's a lot of things that have to go right to get that. Ideally, what you're talking about here is a serviceable offense that outperforms this and is about the 20th best offense in the NFL, and then you can lean on a potentially elite defense, which is a formula that can go as far as winning you a Super Bowl. The last thing I need to mention about the offense before we talk about that defense is this is a spread offense. I think it actually pairs really well with Andy Dalton's skill set as a guy that can just be more of a heady player and not have to lean as much on those tools. The quick-hitting spread West Coast offense is great for that. He can get rid of the ball quickly, lean on some of these playmakers, and just make good decisions and execute the offense. The spread offense is integrated on using the horizontal passing game to really be a part of your running game and just be an efficient play-to-play, well-executed offense. And I think they could have that here. It's a good system pairing of Andy Dalton and Matt Nagy. So let's move on to the defense. And ever since this team traded for Khalil Mack, this team has really been the staple of solid, consistent, terrifying defense. And Mack's obviously a huge part of that. We're going to start with the run defense here. So they rank 3rd in run defense, and that's despite some losses here, but they do get Eddie Goldman back. We typically start with that nose tackle spot there. So there you go, Eddie Goldman, one of the premium run-stuffing nose tackles in the league. That's a big addition that's definitely going to at least make up for losing Brent Urban and Roy Robertson Harris, if not make this better. You have Akeem Hicks next to him, who actually had a bit of a down year last year, was dealing with some nagging injuries as far as I remember, and I expect him to get back to being a more solid, high-end starter against the run. He's just a stud, man. There's nothing you can't say about Akeem Hicks other than he's dealt with injuries throughout his career, but that hasn't really followed him so much here in Chicago as it did back in previous days. But at his age, you are a little bit worried about Akeem Hicks' health, and there's some talk about him maybe seeking a trade or something, so a little bit iffy if you can truly lean on him, but for now, he's there and looks ready to go. You got kind of a rotation as well at the other sort of base defensive end spot. So Bilal Nichols, probably the majority of the reps there, but Mario Edwards crushed it last year. Mario Edwards looked awesome. This is a really athletic guy that, ended up with the Raiders to start off his career and has been a late bloomer here, but has found a perfect system. I mean, he was basically a first-round pick for the Raiders, and it's ironic to see him back with Khalil Mack, because if you really go back to like 2014, I remember like conversations about Mack and Edwards being like an elite number one edge duo in the league. So it's fun to see them back together, but I like Edwards a lot in this scheme as kind of that Roy Robertson-Harris role as that hybrid defensive end spot. I think he rotates in base looks around that kind of three technique spot with Bilal Nichols. So you feel like really good about those four. They signed Mike Pennell, which is just really good veteran depth at nose tackle. So that interior group of run defenders is 5 deep, and you feel real nice about that. Blackson, more of a pass rush specialist. Tonga, kind of a full speed ahead, a developmental late round pick here, and don't know anything about the rest of those guys. But you're 5 deep at interior, and then your edge depth. Khalil Mack still like the best edge defending, edge run defender. Now that kind of Calais Campbell is back to being more of an interior guy. I think that was the one guy that was in that conversation with Mack. But anyway, what else to say about Khalil Mack? We could spend 20 minutes talking about him, how amazing he is, or just say he's Khalil Mack. Yeah, he's going to shit on your run game. Robert Quinn on the other side, again, technically the starter, but James Vaughters, very similar to Malik Reed, and this is that Vic Fangio defense at its core. So Vaughters, if you remember, if you watched last deep dive, Malik Reed, kind of a rotational, do-it-all, balanced 3-4 outside linebacker. Much better run defender than a pass rusher. And not the pass rusher that Malik Reed is, or at least hasn't shown to be so. But I do think he, basically comes in spots, takes some reps from Robert Quinn, Khalil Mack, let them hit the gas mask, get ready for third down, whereas Vaughters can certainly hold his own against the run. So awesome rotation of edge guys. And you've got some depth there as well. You got Tashawn Gibson, who was, a 5th-round pick last year with a lot of size. Could certainly see him taking a step up and an increased role in 2021. Jeremiah Tauchu, veteran, balanced edge, hybrid outside linebacker as well. We'll see if he even makes the team, because I think Charles Snowden was an excellent undrafted free agent pickup. 6'7" hybrid edge outside linebacker. Tons of upside in this defense as that third piece. I mean, if he gets on the field, I think that Sean Diassi, assuming he's trying to replicate that Malik Reed, James Vaughters role in a Vic Fangio style defense, Charles Snowden is perfect for that. Lengthy run defender. Typically when you're 6'7", 240 pounds, you get bodied, but he was really good at Virginia of actually getting off blocks and being that outside contained guy. I actually saw a lot of Anthony Barr in his game. Was surprised he did not get drafted. Wasn't able to work out, and that really probably hurt his stock, but really nice pickup. I think he should make this team, and has a lot of upside for an undrafted pickup. And then you got Khalil Mack's brother, who hasn't shown anything there, but fun to see him on the team for now. The linebacker group, as run defenders, Roquan Smith, excellent sideline to sideline speed, but really not a thumper at all. He does get bodied between the trenches. They knew that when they drafted him. That's not why they drafted him, but it is a weakness in his game. And then Danny Trevathan, much more of a bigger bodied guy, but certainly slowing down and was really kind of struggled last year. And then the depth is really poor as well. Woods, Igbinoghene. They do bring back Christian Jones, who was here once upon a time. I think he's probably a middle linebacker in this system, though he's played both edge and middle linebacker. Again, kind of a hybrid guy. And then Calitro, who was on the Seahawks a couple years ago, whatever. It's not a great linebacking room. We'll talk about them a little bit further, especially against the run. But it's the only thing stopping this from being ranked the best run defense in the NFL, because the front five is outstanding here. So again, third for run defense. This has been one of the most consistent, intimidating run defenses in the league, and I don't see a change in defensive coordinator and a couple role players being moved around here changing that this year. And then the pass rush, again, ranking third in the league. And it starts with Khalil Mack, who is almost becoming underrated. I still think Khalil Mack is the best edge rusher in the league. Now, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, the Bosas, those guys are all insane. But at this point in time, September 13th or whenever the NFL opener is, if it's third down and I need you to beat an elite right tackle and get me a sack, Khalil Mack's still the guy. Now, he gets doubled at an insane rate. You can tell when you watch teams play the Bears, they're more worried about Khalil Mack than teams are worried about TJ Watt. Steelers fans are going to get pissed about that. But when you play the Steelers, you got to worry about Cam Hayward and Tuitt. And for a while, Bud Dupree on the other side. It's just the truth. Just watch anyone play the Bears. Teams are constantly doing whatever they can to not let Khalil Mack ruin their game. So, no, he's not up there for the sacks, or even last year the pressures weren't super high. But that all comes down to, teams game plan around Khalil Mack more than any defender in the NFL not named Aaron Donald. So Khalil Mack to me is still a stud, almost underrated at this point. I'm not necessarily saying he's going to be the best edge rusher in 2021. Just right now, that's who I trust the most. Like I said, those other guys are coming for that title, and Khalil Mack's 30 years old, but I still can't speak highly enough about Khalil Mack. One of my favorite players in the NFL, too. Just all around amazing talent. First ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt. Then opposite of him, Robert Quinn, solid number 2. There was a debate when Yannick Ngakoue lost his mind and said that him and Max Crosby was the best edge rush duo in the NFL, and I actually said Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn you can make a legitimate case for that. Now, it's more about how good Khalil Mack is, but Robert Quinn, just as a pass rusher, is still really good. He's explosive. He's a good number 2. Not a great number 2, but a good number 2 edge rusher, which is, in that 40 to 45 pressure range is what you can count on from him, especially if you have guys like Vodder and those other guys keeping him fresh for pass rush downs. And then the interior group, Akeem Hicks, if he's here, is a big part of this. You really can't single team Akeem Hicks because he's so powerful. He's still one of the best pass rushing interior guys in the league. Again, assuming health and assuming he's here. So you do have to factor that in here a little bit. But then Eddie Goldman comes back. He's not all the way on the side of being just a run defending nose tackle. He's clearly a better run defender than a pass rusher, but he's functional as a pass rusher. But on later downs, we probably see a lot more Mario Edwards, who was extremely efficient as a pass rusher. Again, Mario Edwards was lighting it up last year late in the season. So excited to see him really get more playing time with Urban and Robertson Harris out. So that could be serious. If Akeem Hicks is healthy and Mario Edwards is what he was last year but triples his snap count, really no reason the Bears won't be the best pass rush in the NFL. Because then all of a sudden it's oh crap, we can't just focus on Khalil Mack. The rest of the interior guys, you're really not getting anything. Pennell, miserable pass rusher, strictly run defending nose tackle. Blackson can do some things, but you're kind of in trouble if you have to lean on him. And Tonga has some get off and power, but you don't lean up much on a 7th round rookie to get after the quarterback. So third for pass rush. It is that and the run defense, just this front 4 in general, is still the best redeemable quality of the Chicago Bears, and I don't see that changing this season. The linebacker grade, so I feel like I was really hard on this group, but that's because we were talking about run defense. When you mix in coverage, this looks a lot better because Roquan Smith is a rock star. I think Roquan is going to enter the top 5 linebacker debate. In my opinion, there's 4 linebackers that really set themselves ahead of the competition because of their range and instincts in coverage. That's Eric Kendricks, Fred Warner, Bobby Wagner, and Levante David. And I think Roquan Smith can get into that mix because of what he showed in coverage last year. He's got the IQ to do it, and clearly the dude has the athleticism to do it. So you mix that in where he is probably a top 6 or 7 coverage linebacker right now, and he's getting closer to needing a new contract and really entering that breakout age. I've talked a ton about how linebackers take time, and Roquan is one of those players that has needed some time to get there. But definitely like breakout superstar potential for Roquan Smith. Danny Trevathan next to him, I don't know what to expect from Danny Trevathan. He was bad last year, but he's been a really smart, like high IQ veteran, and maybe just things didn't line up for him last year. Like, he really has some of the best like ability to bait quarterbacks in zone coverage, and he's never been a great athlete, but he seemed to maybe like he's slowing down. So that's a question mark there, Danny Trevathan. And then after him, this team has a suspicious lack of depth at the linebacker position. Josh Woods, we don't really know anything about him. He hasn't had to play much here, but you don't feel great about that. Now, Josh Egan-Buniwe is the guy they've invested in here, a 4th-round pick in 2019. Sorry, that was actually 2018. So a contract year for him. You know, if something happened to Trevathan, who has not always been a model of health, you're leaning on him to kind of show the development. He's got the athleticism, but a converted edge player coming out of college. He has played okay, and he's a good special teamer. So he's kind of the X factor on the depth here. You know, Christian Jones, he could also step in if you don't feel good about Egan-Buniwe. We'll see if he even makes the team, though. And then Calitro has started some games as well, but none of those guys you feel all that good about. So that's 13th for the linebacker room, mostly just Roquan Smith there and how good I feel about him this year. But then the secondary ranking 24th. We mentioned Kyle Fuller getting released here. That puts a ton of stress on these corners. Now, when you have a pass rush like this team does in front of you, it's going to help a Desmond Trufant bounce back. It's going to help a Jalen Johnson in year 2 develop. It's going to help an Artie Burns play some of his best football. So it's complementary there. But the bodies themselves here, especially at the cornerback group, not pretty. Desmond Trufant, miserable for Detroit last year, and then he got hurt, ended up getting released by a bad Atlanta Falcons secondary. So it's been a rough couple years for Desmond Trufant. For him to be your only answer for releasing Kyle Fuller, it's suspect. Now, he's played his best football in more zone-heavy systems, a smart player. Ended up going to Detroit where it was a man, almost exclusively man defense where he really suffered. So maybe getting back to more of that cover 4 quarters defense that you're going to see here, we see something closer to the old Desmond Trufant, but I don't think we get full-on old Desmond Trufant back. Jalen Johnson, just perfect scheme fit here, was up and down as a rookie who was called upon to start, but that's better than most rookie corners can say. He is definitely a pivot point for this defense. You got to see more stability from him, but I think you can with the right coaching and the right system fit, which they have here. And then the slot corner should be an open competition, really, between Duke Shelley, Kendall Vilder, and Thomas Graham, who would actually be, honestly, my bet to be the best slot corner. Does he start there day one? Probably not, but I loved Thomas Graham. I thought there was not a huge gap between Thomas Graham and Elijah Molden coming out of Washington. I thought those guys were both kind of 3rd, 4th round picks and day one starters in the slot. We'll see where they end up going. Duke Shelley stepped in there last year and was serviceable, another good prospect in the slot. So it's hard to rank either of those guys too highly. And Vildor, more of an athletic freak who just needs to kind of develop there, so he could get in the mix. It's hard to rank any one of those guys too highly, but I'm going to be honest, I'm not too worried about the slot corner position because I like the competition that they have there. And even Artie Burns could compete there, but I think Artie Burns is just kind of the 4th guy here, that can plug in anywhere, and you hope he has a better year because he was really a bust in Pittsburgh, but still a good athlete, still pretty young, injured last year, coming back. So there's kind of your 6 corners. Behind that, it's just kind of a competition for the 7 spot that you're not expecting anything from, with like Tabor and Crawford and those dudes. The safety group is pretty solid. So you got Eddie Jackson, who's, still one of the better true free safeties in the league. A couple down years following up from 2018, where he was the best safety in the NFL. Super opportunistic year for him. Tons of big plays. And he's a very aggressive mindset dude. He's a risk taker. And I don't think it's an accident that he had his best year next to Adrian Amos, who's much more of a old school definition of a safety, kind of keep everything in front of you, whereas Eddie Jackson, he's not afraid to jump something and let you get behind him if he's going to make a big play. So to me, that's kind of what Eddie Jackson is. You love to have him on your defense. You might live with a few, mistakes that are going to lead to some coverage gaffes when you get the big plays that you get from Eddie Jackson. So to me, that's how I view Eddie Jackson. If you want a ranking for him, he's in the 9 to 12 range of safeties. There's a lot of good safeties in the NFL right now, and he does have that one real outlier season. The rest of his 3 years, he's been just a good starter. So then you have Tashawn Gibson next to him, who has sustained a really nice career here. I'm surprised Gibson's a guy that no one really keeps around. The Bears smart enough to do it here, bringing him back, but it's not like they gave him a long-term contract extension. But, he's better than a basically veteran minimum contract. He's been good pretty much everywhere he's gone. Yeah, he struggled for a miserable Texans defense the year before this year, but just a heady, versatile safety, not an elite athlete, but man, he's just a good starting do-it-all safety, and he's perfect for the system as well. So you have a really nice safety duo, at least on top of a suspect group of corners. DeAndre Houston Carson has not really gotten the opportunities, but based on the lack of investing in this group, I feel like they kind of like him. He stepped in and did some nice things in very limited playing time last year. They hope they don't have to lean on him, but I feel like between him and Deion Bush and Jordan Lucas, who have all kind of had, been close to being the third safety, basically, a lot of teams, whether it was the Chiefs with Lucas or Bush and Carson here, they've always been a team, and 2 smart teams with the Bears and the Chiefs have been yeah, we can go with those guys if we need to lean on them. So I think they'll be okay. We just haven't seen much from really any 3 of those guys, and then Marquis Christian's been around the league as well. So it's a very experienced group of safeties, especially. So I feel good about the safety group. It's just the corners I'm really worried about. There's a world where this is the worst group of corners in the NFL. Probably not going to happen, though, because I think the pass rush elevates these guys, and they end up looking better than I'm actually grading them out right now. So that puts out the 8th defense in the NFL. It is those secondary questions. But again, if the pass rush elevates the secondary there, this can still be the best defense in the NFL. I really believe that, especially if you get breakout years from Edwards and Roquan Smith, and Jalen Johnson. Definitely just a few little holes here or there. You get those to be good outcomes, and those guys develop, and I think this can still be the best defense in the NFL. Also, with the defensive coaching, we just don't know for sure if Sean Diassi is a good defensive coordinator. I feel like Pagano doesn't retire if he doesn't feel like the defense is in good hands. I've heard great things about him. So ranking 15th for a young defensive coordinator that we haven't seen yet, but it is the you hire within, you have confidence that that's going to permeate throughout the rest of the organization. So another spot where this could well exceed the ranking of 15th. We just need to see that. Home field's very solid for the Bears. Maybe I'm biased because I go to a Bears game every year. Just a tradition with my dad, but they get rocking when they're winning. It's a very passionate fan base, and as long as the Bears have a chance at making the playoffs, they're going to let the other team hear about it, and they love seeing that pass rush get after it. So it can be an electric, underrated home field advantage. Not to mention, a team that's used to playing in the cold. The scheme is that Vic Fangio 3-4 split safety defense until we see something otherwise. Now, they did actually run a lot of cover 6 as well. I think they were second most in the NFL in cover 6, but that plays off of cover 4. So it's a lot of kind of off-man zone coverage, kind of keep everything in front of you and let the pass rush do most of the work for you. So that's the system there for Da Bears. The team grades, again, 21st overall, 27th for the offense, which you hope can be better than that. Just way too many question marks right now. Defense, 8th. Maybe the floor for that defense is 8th. Special teams, outstanding here. They actually ranked 4th for special teams. They seem to have solved their kicker problems with Cairo Santos. And beyond that, like, their coverage unit is phenomenal. Really no questions about the special teams. They are borderline elite right there right now. And then the culture ranks 20th. I still think it's a very good culture. I think this team really likes Matt Nagy, and they're ready to play for him, and they know that this defense is going to get after it. And if they can just have an average offense, this team can get back to what they were a couple years ago, which is, a team that some people thought was going to be in the Super Bowl mix. So, but just to recap the strengths and weaknesses here, I think we've been pretty clear about this, but pass rush, run defense, the front 7 of that defense is just outstanding. And then the weaknesses, you got the uncertainty at quarterback paired with the offensive line. Definitely some question marks up in the air with that offense, and the cornerback unit, potentially something that could hold this defense back on certain matchups. If they run into good offensive lines with some good receivers, those teams are probably going to be able to give the Bears fits. But to wrap up with the schedule now, so their over-under is 7.5 wins with the exact same odds as the Denver Broncos, who was my last team. You also will notice that their team overall grade is almost identical. The Bears came out at 78.73, and the Broncos were 78.65, so those both round up and down to 78.7, and Vegas agrees. These teams are like identical, so kind of fun to see my rankings pair up with Vegas in that regard. But yeah, 7.5 over-under for their wins, and the start to their schedule is not too bad. At the Rams, got them losing that, but winning 4 of the next 5 there, beating Cincinnati, Detroit, at Las Vegas, and beating Green Bay at home, and then losing at Cleveland. So I actually have them starting 4-2, and that would bode favorably towards Andy Dalton holding on to that job for a little bit. But then a really rough stretch at Tampa Bay, San Francisco, at Pittsburgh, and then Baltimore. My goodness, that's a brutal gauntlet. I gave them the loss at Detroit to be nice to the Lions with my 31st deep dive. Definitely a winnable game there. But then finishing up with a pretty rough, finish on their season. Arizona, Green Bay, Minnesota, Seattle, the Giants, Minnesota again. Winnable games in there against some less dominant offensive lines. They match up well against Minnesota. They match up well against Arizona and Seattle. So I'm not going to say this could get out of control and this can't be a playoff team. I have them going 7-10 at the end of the day, but this is far from a rough schedule, especially given the way they match up with this pass rush. It's going to give them a chance, especially against teams that don't have great offensive lines, but really any week. You got that good of a pass rush, you have a good chance to impact the opposing team's quarterback and keep that score down. If the offense can just hold their own, it's a team that can win a lot of close games, and if a few things go their way, they could win the division. They could win a playoff game. Could they win a Super Bowl? We've seen great defenses with average offenses do it before. It's just really tough to do it, and that margin for error is so small. But we are starting to get into that conversation here in the deep dives of teams that can be playoff teams. So we've got the Bears coming in at 21. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Please do hit that like button as well. Who do you think comes next in the deep dives? We'll see you in probably like 4 days with the 4th of July weekend here. It's probably going to be an extended hiatus between deep dives here, but we'll see you guys for that. Appreciate you for watching as always, and cheers.